The Battle of the Bulge, December 16, 1944 through January 25, 1945, the Ardennes. Following the successful Normandy landings in June 1944 and the various landings in southern France, the Allied powers advanced quickly through France, faster than what the military leadership of both the Allies and Germany had anticipated. Due to this, the Allied troops were suffering from fatigue from weeks of combat. Supplies were dangerously low, and the supply lines themselves were extremely thin. Hitler decided that if the German army could quickly attack through the Belgian Ardennes forest, a weak, quiet part in the Allied line, occupied by battle-weary units, and capture the Allies' supply port of Antwerp, he could split the Allied front in two. As a result of this, Hitler could make a separate peace with Britain and the USA rather than unconditional surrender and focus on Soviet Russia. This was all fantasy, and his commanders were not optimistic the offensive would go ahead. After a 2-hour artillery bombardment on the Allied lines, the attack, comprising of 200,000 German troops and almost 1,000 tanks of the 5th and 6th Panzer Armies and the 7th Army, began on the American forces on December 16, 1944. The German forces achieved complete surprise on the outnumbered American troops. Special forces caused confusion by sending in English-speaking German soldiers dressed up in U.S. uniforms who changed road signs and cut telephone wires. The bad weather for the moment was also too cloudy and foggy, which meant that the might of the Allied Air Force could not be used. Many U.S. units became overrun or had to surrender. Those that were not established a defense around road junctions at Saint-Vith and Bastogne. The difficult terrain of the Ardennes made a large-scale offensive unexpected, so it would take a while for the Allied High Command to accept that this was a major attack. While the Germans did see some success in the center, the northern 6th Panzer Army's advance stalled within a few days. On December 18th, the 101st Airborne Division were surrounded by the Germans at Bastogne. Cold, starved, outnumbered, and low on ammunition, the 101st would hold out for 7 days against the German assault. On Christmas Eve, some German troops almost reached the River Meuse, but with little fuel, the German advance had reached its peak. On December 26th, General Patton's 3rd Army, which had completely turned around from its advance, relieved the 101st at Bastogne. The German resupply difficulties had grown and the skies had cleared, allowing the Allied air power the ability to target German forces. The German blitzkrieg tactics also couldn't work in the heavily wooded, snowy forests, deep valleys, and narrow roads of the Ardennes. Even heavily armored vehicles such as the Germans' Tiger II heavy tank could not turn the tide, because it consumed huge amounts of fuel. The U.S. forces began a counteroffensive on January 3rd. By this point, the German Panzer Division were so low on fuel, they abandoned a lot of their tanks. The U.S. counteroffensive regained all land lost during the German offensive by late January. The Battle of the Bulge was the largest battle fought by the Americans in World War II. Due to deep snow, cold temperatures, bad weather, and dwindling fuel reserves, the German Army and Air Force were unable to launch the crushing blow to the Allies Hitler had hoped for. While the attack is known as the Ardennes Offensive, the initial attack by the Germans created a triangular bulge that stretched for miles into the Allied front line, creating the commonly known name of Battle of the Bulge. The Americans suffered around 80,000 casualties, while the Germans had 100,000 casualties, and most of the tanks used in the offensive, which could not be replaced. Subscribe for more World War II videos. Get your copy of Simple History World War II today. Thank you guys for all your support on the Simple History YouTube channel. If you enjoy it, please consider visiting our Patreon page. There, you can show us your support for the channel by donating and make a huge difference in what we're able to create for you. Plus, you can get early access on upcoming videos. So let's keep it growing, and thank you for being part of this amazing community.